So when I did the closing argument in that case, I incorporated that in, I did my closing as a 1940s radio show. And so my case was a Pilates board had fallen on a lady's head, and she was this amazing mom, and then it made her, not so amazing. So I go, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another episode of Super Mom and a Half. Yes, Super Mom and a Half. The amazing mom who can do more than any other mom. This week's episode, Super Mom and a Half loses her powers when a negligently placed Pilates board falls onto her head, giving her a mild traumatic brain injury. Meet your cast of characters. And I did for like 10 minutes this improvised radio show, and I looked, and the judge is doing this.
Welcome to another great episode of Cases Gone Wild with me, your host, Jon Marko. I've been an attorney for over 15 years, and I bring in some of the best, most accomplished, crazy attorneys from around the country to tell you about their cases, and we talk about some of the most wildest, unbelievable, insane stories that you have ever heard that are true. These are real stories, and we have a special show in store for you today with one of the most accomplished lawyers who's also an actor. He merges his acting. Very interesting attorney, very accomplished attorney. Brian Breiter is here today from the sunny California. Thank you, Brian, for joining us on Cases Gone Wild.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. It's great to be here. I see your Shinola clock behind you. Is that a Shinola?
Yes, it is.
I was in Detroit just a couple weeks ago. Our paths crossed, so I missed you while I was there.
I know. I was sad. I was in trial. We weren't able to get together, but I'm very excited to bring you back. We're going to talk at the end of the show for you lawyers out there. Brian is coming and is going to be among some distinguished speakers at a trial lawyers conference that we're going to be hosting right here in Detroit next summer. If you like the show, please share it on your social media. Please give us a thumbs up. Give us good reviews. Brian, you are an amazing human being and an amazing lawyer and an amazing actor. So you have some of the world records in some of these verdicts, and you are an actor. You have been an actor for over 30 years, I understand.
45 years.
45 years. And you do improv. You incorporate what I really love. And the first time I meet, I think anybody that meets you, you're one of those guys that you have a distinguished look, first of all. You have the nice mustache and beard going on. If you're watching on the video, guys, you can see this on YouTube. Remember, you have a very charismatic personality. You are just a memorable figure. And the first time I met you, I liked you immediately. I realized you were a genius immediately. And then the more I got to know about you, the more I liked you, and the more I thought you were even a bigger genius than I had originally thought. And what I love about you is you take some of these acting techniques and you incorporate them right into your trial work to help you represent these clients and get some of the biggest verdicts in the country on some very tough cases.
I gotta be on your podcast every day so I could wake up and feel like, emboldened by all these amazing comments you're giving. Come on, don't go that far. I'm just
they're all true. They're all true.
And
you play water polo, dude. Are you like a professional water polo? I see on Facebook we get to keep up because we're on different sides of the country, but I see you. You're like ripping it up in the pool. Water polo is not an easy sport. I don't know how you have time for all these accomplishments.
I'm sorry to torture you to see me in a Speedo. It's not
You
nice
look good. It's the best part of
thank you.
waking up.
Listen, I'm excited to be here. I know how great you're doing in Michigan, and I'm excited here to be sharing ideas and collective hive mind between trial lawyers. It's important for us to share these experiences with each other. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. And you did improv. I think maybe the first time I met you, it might have been out at Raleigh's house, or it was maybe at a Jerry Spence event. I don't remember. Everything kind of blurs together over the years, but I remember we did improv for trial at, I'm pretty sure it was at Raleigh's house out in Montana.
I did one there. I did it with TLU. I did it with Aboda. I've done it with Cala. Traveled around the country doing it. But I think it was at Nick's place in Montana with Trial by Human.
So tell us, first of all, you have an acting background, and tell us how you've used your acting background to really be this kind of, to make trials fun. Because one thing I can tell for certain about you, you love trials and you love what you do.
I do. I love being on stage, so the good thing about being in trial is the audience can't leave. They have to stay for the whole performance.
Whether they like it or not, right?
Whether they like the show or not, so that they're captive audience, and they have to keep coming back day after day. So, no, I love it. I love connecting with jurors, and just, what I say is that there are two shows that are going on, two stories that are going on when you're in a trial. There's the story of the client, what happened to the client, what they're going through. But the other story is what's going on in the courtroom. It started 3 months earlier when the jury gets their summons. That's when this bigger story begins. And there's so many different players, the judge, defense counsel, the clerk, the other jurors, and everybody is in this, performance together. And guess who writes the end of that story?
The jury.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, you have to make them feel connected. You have to make them feel invested and want to write, the ending that hopefully you're getting for your client. And it
really is like a drama. There's, I feel like good trials have some of all the good characteristics of a good motion picture. They have times where you can laugh a little bit. They have times where you might cry a little bit. They have times where you can be happy. They have times where you have a tragedy or setback in the trial where you're like, oh my God, how are we going to get over this? And then you also have bad guys and good guys. And, there's just so many elements going on.
When you think about a good story, what makes a good story? It's all those elements you just talked about. And, the cases that we're presenting, they're almost like horror films, right? You have a nice person or a family that has been destroyed or altered by something really, really bad. And you can't have, the case and the message just be tragic the whole time. You need to mix it up a little, because the jury gets exhausted of being sad. Without some hope, without some comedy in the trial, it makes it difficult for the jurors to sit there. So there are times, and we use some of these techniques by, introducing the improvisational theater stuff that I teach, to bring some joy, to bring some light into the courtroom. And then it does get heavy. I mean, when you watch like a really good stand-up comedian, you're watching them, you're laughing the whole time. And then there's that moment where the comedian says, hey, let's get real for a minute. I want to get serious for a second. And then they tell like this serious story, and then there's a punchline again, and you start laughing. You need these breaks. It's like laughter is a pressure valve release.
Right.
And it gives you some chance to really connect and give the jury a break from the dismemberment and death and surgeries and pain. Because if you don't have the good stuff, what's the money for?
Right. And you are based out in California, but I know that you do cases all over the country.
I do.
And
I have an office. I have an office in Miami. I've had that office there for almost 30 years, and I've had the office in LA for 25 years. So I'm back and forth. I was just in Miami last week, and a month before that, we had a trial that was starting against Uber. I flew in, and first day of trial it settled. So, I'm there trying cases as often as I'm trying cases in California. I have a wrongful death case coming up in Colorado next month, and so I'll go where the courtroom lets me in.
So let me ask you, were you an actor first or a lawyer first?
So I haven't been an actor. I'm sorry, a lawyer for 45 years because I started as a child actor growing up in Miami. In theater productions and then doing commercials as a kid and little TV things here and there. Then I stopped when I was about 15 and I started doing sports. I started playing water polo. When I went back to law school and was doing trial advocacy, I was saying, this is a performance. And I found myself relying on all those acting techniques I did. And that's when I got super involved in improvisational theater. And I joined the union. I got, cast in some projects. And then my acting career and my law career were kind of paralleling each other. And I just, decided to meld them together. And so instead of being an out of work actor waiting tables, I was an out of work actor trying cases. And then I would get a gig, an acting gig, and make some money doing that and have fun doing that and, keep my law practice going.
That's amazing story. And, Jeffrey Feiger, who is my friend and who I learned with, he had a background in drama as well. And I think it served him well in the courtroom and to be able to intersect those. Now, when I took your improv for trial, like many things as a young person, not being able to see the full picture, I was thinking to myself, why in the world would I need to know this? And how is this going to help me be a better lawyer? Because that's all I care about. I'm not an actor. I'm a lawyer. I'm more single focused. But the things that we did with you, I found myself actually using in the courtroom to make me a much better attorney and a better human being to be able to relate to people and communicate with people. So tell a little bit about, we don't have all day here. I wish we did.
I'll tell you the origins. You want to hear the origin story?
Yeah.
All right. So there was this famous lawyer in Miami named Richard Sharpstein. He has since passed away. God bless him. And he was a legendary criminal defense attorney that represented all the big time drug dealers in these federal court cases. And I was a clerk in federal court, and I used to see him trying cases. One day I met him in a coffee shop. He offered me a job to be an intern at his office. And I went up to him and I said, I heard a story about you. And let me tell you the story. So he was representing this very well-known, infamous drug dealer in federal court where you lose 95% of the time. And he's doing his closing argument. And what he does is he puts a bag on the table and he opens it up and he pulls out a brown hat, fedora, and he takes out this crumply trench coat and he puts it on, and he pulls out a pad and a paper and he begins to do his closing as Columbo. And he goes, ma'am, let's just go through this one more time because it's just not making sense. And he does the whole closing argument as Columbo. And then he takes off the hat, puts it in the bag, the trench coat, puts it under the table, sits down. 2 hours later, acquittal. And I said,
no way.
What, is this true? And he was this little Jewish guy with an afro. And he goes, Brian, in closing argument, you're in a theater and you can do whatever you want as long as you're talking about the evidence. Go take an acting class. And then I was like, and that's what it is. We are telling a story, and it's the more compelling you can be as a storyteller, the more connected you're going to be with the jury. Listen, there are plenty of lawyers that don't do that, and they just have great cases, and they do it. I try cases that are not great, with $50,000 offers, and then turn it into an $8 million verdict. How? Because we really are creative in the way we tell the stories, and that's all I can say. For me, it works, and I think that every lawyer should have some of these tools to be able to reach in and start using. Many lawyers already do a lot of these things. They just don't know that they're doing it, or they don't know what it's called. in the improv language, but they really can transform the way you tell stories.
Well, let's tell our viewers, you're on Cases Gone Wild. We talk about wild cases here. Tell our listeners about how you've incorporated some of this improv, this acting background into some of your cases. I heard somebody told me, I was either on the listserv or another lawyer, that you actually did some type of puppet show to the jury in open court. Is this true?
Yes. So I had a case where my guy was hit by an off-duty ambulance, and there was a video of it. It's pretty good impact. He only had one epidural, and he was a surgical candidate. And so
one injection.
One injection. It wasn't a huge case, but it had an impact on his life. And the defense attorney throughout the case was a grouch, just this real grouch. And right sitting next to him was the corporate representative lawyer, and he was writing him notes and passing him notes. And the whole time I'm thinking, man, what a grouch. This guy's such a puppet to the other guy. And I was like, grouch, puppet. So the day before closing, I'm in there, and the judge goes, counsel, I want to make sure that during closing you do not object, because you can do anything you want during closing. I go, I could do anything I want. And she goes, yeah, you could do anything. I said, can I do a puppet show? And she goes, of course, Mr. Breiter. Are you going to use a hand puppet or a marionette? And I said, I haven't decided yet. I ran home. I'm digging through my kids' toys, and I found an Oscar the Grouch puppet. So the next morning, I walk in to the closing, and I go, ladies and gentlemen, I put a box on the table. I'm now going to do my closing argument, just me sitting here all alone, and I'm going to tell you the facts about the case with no interruption, no objections, nothing. Oh, yeah? And then I pull out Oscar the Grouch, and he's like, I'm here too. I'm like, who are you? I'm the defense argument. Well, you're not supposed to be. What are you, scared? No, I'm not scared. And so I did this whole thing with the puppet interrupting me, and I said, this is the defense argument. Then after I settled down, and I said, look, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. Then in my rebuttal, I pointed out that, look at the other guy. You haven't heard anything from him, but he's passing him notes. This other attorney is the puppet for the corporate rep, and he's just feeding him the lines. He doesn't even believe it. And the jury's like,
oh, wow. And it was all true, brutal honesty, with that,
yeah.
right?
And we got a $2 million verdict on a case where they offered, $150,000 on a one epidural case. Why? Because it was just, I don't know if the puppet show was the reason. I think the client was great and it was real, but it was just a way to engage the jury in a way that they were not expecting.
Yeah, and it helps. And I bet the jurors, when they tell their friends and family about that case, have you ever been on jury duty? I bet the first thing that comes to their mind is your closing argument with Oscar the Grouch.
I've gotten 2 referrals already from jurors on that trial alone, and it was last year. So
that's like the highest compliment.
Yeah.
So what did the defense attorney do when you pulled out Oscar the Grouch?
So this. And then after, he goes, I was going to take the puppet out of your hand. I go, no, you weren't. He goes, and then I was going to put my sock on my hand and do a puppet. I said, but you didn't do it. And I was going to do this. I said, but you didn't do it. Defense attorneys, for the most part, follow the script, and they don't have the nerve or the guts or the know-how to improvise in the moment. I would have done any one of those things and been like, I'm a puppet too, and this guy's, you're the puppets. He's putting you, his hand up your ass and whatever. You got to be able to do judo in your arguments.
Yeah, they love that stuff. I had a trial. I tried a case this summer, an ambulance case as well, and I didn't have the improv abilities that you did, where I could do a full puppet show, but I had an ambulance case where an old lady, my client, got hit by an ambulance going through an intersection. She didn't hear the lights and sirens. She couldn't hear the sirens, couldn't see the lights. And she was already on disability, blah, blah, blah. But the defendant driver never looked to the right as he was clearing the intersection. and he had on these big dark Oakley sunglasses that had like the wraparound, that you probably would wear playing volleyball out in Manhattan Beach, California, or wherever. And something really bothered me about these glasses, and so I went to the mall and I went to the Sunglass Hut and I bought a pair of the glasses, and it comes with these big inserts written by a corporate lawyer. It's like this long, and it says "Do not wear while driving." And so I saved these glasses till the guy got on the stand, and in a dramatic fashion they came out, and I put the glasses on in front of the jury, and we had a pretty strict judge. He let me do it. And the jury's on the edge of their seats because it was a dramatic moment, right? It's a dramatic moment. I'm wearing these goofy sunglasses in the middle of a courtroom, and I pull out the insert falls down, and then I was able to cross-examine the guy on it, and I said, what did you do? What were you doing with these glasses? Well, I was driving. What does it say right here? Do not wear while driving. And that was dramatic. And then I had my expert put on the glasses. And the defense doesn't know how to deal with this type of stuff. They start going nuts. The objection this, objection that,
And let me tell you something. The judges, I find, even the most buttoned-up judges, they love it. You think they like sitting through a boring trial after trial? They want to be entertained too. How many times have you seen a judge fall asleep during somebody's trial?
I talked to the jury afterwards, and they said, that was so cool. They said everybody was talking about it. They said it was like the glove does not fit. You must acquit on the OJ. They said that's all anybody could talk about. Now, look, that was a little tiny piece of the trial. It wasn't, we still probably would have won, but those little improv type things, that little stuff, it adds to it.
100%. You got to do something outside the box and make it memorable so that they're talking about it back there. But the point is, the judges enjoy it too. So I used to do an improvised 1940s radio show. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, the 1940s radio show. And I had a judge who was 85 years old. Judge McLaughlin. And so I'm talking to him, off the record. I'm like, hey, where are you from? I'm from Iowa. And I'm like, what'd you do as a kid? Oh, we sit around the radio and listen to radio shows. I go, oh, really? And I told him I did these improvised radio shows. He goes, oh, that sounds great, like Fibber McGee and Molly and, that kind of stuff, and Gunsmoke. I'm like, yeah, we did all those. So I already knew that I had a fan. So when I did the closing argument in that case, I incorporated that in. I did my closing as a 1940s radio show. And so my case was a Pilates board had fallen on a lady's head, and she was this amazing mom, and then it made her, not so amazing. So I go, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another episode of Supermom and a Half. Yes, Supermom and a Half. The amazing mom who can do more than any other mom. This week's episode, Supermom and a Half loses her powers when a negligently placed Pilates board falls onto her head, giving her a mild traumatic brain injury. Meet your cast of characters. And I did for like 10 minutes this improvised radio show, and I looked, and the judge is doing this. And like slapping his leg.
Oh, no.
And what's the defense attorney going to do? And the jurors, I had some older jurors. They're like,
yeah,
eating popcorn, enjoying it. It's just like your moment, your Perry Mason moment with the glasses.
Yeah.
The judge loves it too. And if the judge doesn't like it, they shut it down and you move on.
And the defense just gets so rattled by it because it's so outside of their written game plan that they had wanted to follow.
And here's what they do. Oh, I'm not as theatrical as Mr. Marko, and I'm not going to go and get some dime store glasses and do some parlor. Mr. Breiter and his theatrics are, he's much better at remembering all your names. Forgive me if I'm reading from my paper. That same old tired bullshit.
Right. Well, that's really fun. And you know what? It makes it more fun. And look, and I always tell people, I like to have some fun in trials. Look, they're stressful. They can be heartbreaking. They can be everything. But you have to find moments of fun, I think. and levity in the trial, like we talked about earlier. You know, it makes it better for everybody there. Everybody there.
100%.
So tell us about, now I've read about some of these crazy verdicts that you get, and I follow you religiously on Facebook, and I know you have Instagram, and you do a really good job with, you know, posting about what's going on and staying relevant with that. But I read about some of these things, and I just got to ask you about them, and I think our listeners would like it.
Sure.
So what is going on? I read that you had a case against Terminex for poisoning people. What happened there?
So that one was right during the week of the pandemic. So the verdict came in on March 11th. Pandemic shut the courtroom down March 13th.
Oh my God.
So I'm presenting this 3-week trial, like hearing about pandemic, and we're scrubbing down the courtroom, you know, in a case where someone was poisoned. So it's kind of, you know, relevant at the time. But my client was working in a salon, and next to the salon was a Starbucks. And the wall that separated the Starbucks and the salon was infested with roaches.
Was this out in
And
California?
so my guy is out in California, and my guy is in the bathroom where the adjacent wall is, and he's, you know, making a poop. He's sitting on the toilet. And he's sitting in there, and all of a sudden, this is like at 7 p.m. when the Starbucks is closed next door, the bathroom starts filling with smoke. And he starts, you know, like trying to get out of there. He's got to like clean up and get out before he runs out. And he starts breathing it in, and his eyes start burning and watering. And he thinks there's a fire next door. So he runs to the Starbucks next door, and he starts banging on the window, and the Starbucks is closed. It's supposed to be open. And some guy with a gas mask on comes, and they're like, "Is there a fire?" He goes, "No, I'm spraying chemicals." What they did was they started spraying chemicals into the wall, which was not insulated, which they never
So it's like
checked.
hollow in between, essentially.
Correct. And the poison, called perithrins and pyrethroids, are seeping through the cracks of the wall and the ventilation system and fill up him, and he's breathing this in.
Oh my God.
And it destroys his epithelium in his trigeminal nerve here in his brain, and he loses his smell and taste forever.
Wow.
Now, the thing about that is you cannot prove loss of smell and taste. You can't prove it. There's no test to prove
That
it.
is crazy. I never thought about that. My grandma could never taste or smell. She lost it. But like, you know.
Yeah, you could lose it from a brain injury. You can lose it from a toxic exposure. These are neurotoxins. Anyway, they didn't believe it. They hired this big fancy law firm that filed an MIL that said, you can't talk about how successful we are. All they did was talk about how successful they were. And we presented the case, and I did my closing in that case as a game show.
So tell me about that, like Hollywood Squares, or
so,
what?
so I present I present the open, and I use drawings that illustrate the trial. I have an artist that draws the trial, and then I played a clip from Ratatouille, you know, where the food critic is there ready to write this terrible review, and he takes a bite of the ratatouille, and it takes him back to his childhood. He's in his mom's kitchen, he's crying, and so the jury's locked in on the loss of smell and taste. And they had put on these ridiculous defense experts. So I'm, doing about halfway into my closing, presenting my case, and I said, Your Honor, I left something in the jury room. And he goes, okay. So I go back there, and I had a microphone back there. And the door's closed, and I'm not in the courtroom. I'm now in the jury room. And you hear, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for America's favorite game show, Tell the Truth. And I burst the door open, and I come out as a cheesy game show host. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Tell the Truth, where you, the studio audience jury, get to decide if the defense experts were telling you the truth or lying through their teeth. Let's meet our contestant, the plaintiff. And today's show is brought to you by Terminex, the company that sprays poison in your face. Let's meet our experts. And I had a PowerPoint behind me with the experts' heads popping up and what they did. And I had a BS meter. on, their testimony, and I'm doing this for like 20 minutes
No way.
of game show. And then we go, now time for a commercial break by Terminex. And I put on a Terminex hat, and hey, it's me, Joe, from Terminex. I'm proud of what I do because I'm careful. And whether we're spraying poison in a church or a school or a business, we always let the other side know what we're doing so they're not there, so we don't hurt anybody, because that's the Terminex way. And we don't hide evidence, and we, like legitimizing this. And it's like, and now back to our show.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I just did this. And the defense, first of all, the judge was, and the jury was sitting on the end of their seat. I had a, galley full of people. There was no recovering from that.
Did the defendant object?
No.
Did they go nuts?
No.
That is...
Oh, Mr. Breiter this is parlor tricks,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. They don't want to hear the truth. I don't know what to say. And the jury came back with $8 million on the $50,000 offer.
That is an amazing story, an amazing result. And a lot of people, even me included, I don't know if I would have the courage to go all out like you did. And partly because I'm not as good of I'm not as good of a presenter of that as you. But
well, again, I'm not telling you to imitate me. And I'm not going to go imitate Brian Panish or Nick Rowley or Dordick. I'm going to be myself and do what I do. But certainly learning what you can do and testing your limits. See, the thing about improvisation when we do our classes, we teach you how to fail. That's so important to learn how to, can I say the F word?
This is no limits. Yeah.
Okay. To learn how to fuck up and then rebound from it.
Yeah.
Because most lawyers are terrified of making a mistake. The whole thing about improv is you're working without a net, and it's risky.
Yeah.
And if you make a mistake, they don't know. They don't know that you made a mistake. You do, but you can recover from it. And, just testing the boundaries and
I love
walking
it.
the tightrope.
I really love it. Can you tell us a time where you felt like you made a mistake and had to recover from it? Does anything stick out?
I make mistake every trial.
Sure.
Look, this last Uber case I did, I had a nice verdict against Uber. I think I'm one of the only attorneys, if not the only attorney in the country at this point to get a verdict against Uber for injury claim. And in that case, my client was this very super shy, withdrawn guy, and I knew that he had really emotionally suffered in that case. And the defense didn't know. Like, he had suffered so bad he had been hospitalized emotionally at some point. And they didn't know that. And so I didn't tell my client I was going to do this. But during his time on the stand, we're really connected, and it's like, it's going along. And I said, hey, client, what's been like the darkest moment for you? And he starts heavy breathing, and I'm like, oh shit, this guy's having PTSD right now.
No.
He is gonna lose it. And I'm not even exaggerating here. For like 2.5, 3 minutes, he can't respond. And the judge goes, let's take a break. And I go into, now I know what it was because he had, suicidal thoughts at that time. They didn't know that. And so I go back in the jury room. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. I had no idea this was going to happen. Can you continue? And he goes, yeah, I can do it. He collected himself. We go back in there, and I go, I just asked you what your darkest moment was. And he goes, I don't want to talk about it. And I go, I get it. Let's move on. I go, do you have hope for the future? And he goes, yes. Now, considering I almost gave up all hope, now I do. So what did the jury knew
Right.
without saying
it.
what had happened. And I thought in that moment, I just blew the case.
Yeah.
That I blew it. But it was a best moment in the case because it was so real. That's an example of, like, was that a fail or was that a win? You can make any of these opportunities into something real.
Yeah.
By just being super in the moment and super connected. Here, by the way, I'm wearing my Improv for Trial pin. If you want to learn more about it, go onto our Instagram at Improv for Trial or our website, Improv for Trial, and you can learn about this stuff. You know, we teach on Zoom, lawyers across the country, and we teach live. People fly us in to do their whole law firm. You know, we do private training with lawyers. We do improvised trials. That's something we do in every case. I don't know if I'm sure you do something like a focus group, something like that, present it. What we do is a little bit different. We have a courtroom, and we have real jurors come in, and we have someone who plays a judge, and we have people that play witnesses, and we improvise the trial. So we'll do it with nice judge. Then we do it with mean judge. Then we do it with this information coming in, and then we do it with this information staying out. And then we drop a bomb during the presentation to see how the witness or how the lawyer can handle it. Like something really out of left field, or that's possible but unexpected. And we're improvising through these scenarios versus just, here's our case and this is what it's going to, and we just focus group it, because nothing ever goes according to your exact plan.
That's right.
Trial.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
That's right.
Well, that's amazing. And I hope that when you come to Detroit, because I know that you're coming for the Michigan Trial Lawyers Summit, which is on June 20th and 21st of 2025 this summer. You're headlining along with Nick Rowley and some other very prominent attorneys from around the country, and I hope that you'll be able to talk at the summit about some of these skills that you're telling us about today, because I think people would be really interested to hear about it.
You know, so just talking about it, in my opinion, is pretty worthless, because I can tell you these stories, you can listen to these podcasts, you can go and follow my stuff, but if you're not doing it, it really doesn't mean anything. So what I prefer to do is have a group of just 20 people who sign up. The doors are closed. Nobody's in there, and we do
Love it. I want you to come to my firm, and we got to talk, but I'd love to have you come and talk to me and my lawyers about some of these techniques.
Yeah, you know the Hammer, Darryl Isaac. Yeah, great guy. He flew Joseph Limbaugh, who is the co-teacher with me, flew us out to Kentucky, and for 2 days, we did a boot camp and taught all their lawyers. Rex Paris had us do it. We worked with the Panish firm when they put on their trial college. You know, Axe Law, they had 25 lawyers over 2 days. We did, a boot camp teaching all these attorneys these skills. And the one thing that the lawyers, the big time trial lawyers at these firms told me is, when they watch these associates or young lawyers or people that they had in the pre-lit department do this stuff, they're like, holy shit, these guys are amazing. They should be trying cases. I had no idea that they could perform like this or what they could do, because, people are scared of trying or speaking in front of others. And when you're in this safe place, this improv stage, failing is what it's all about. And so it's the recovering, and we teach something called status, which takes years, if not decades, to master. But just unlocking that concept in people's brains, like, really, it's like the Matrix locking you in with all this incredible
unlocks the
information.
potential, right? So tell us about this Uber case, because I read this was another case I wanted to ask you about. So people understand, like, especially non-lawyer listeners out there, because we do have, this show goes out to like 100,000 people. There's a lot of lawyers, but also a lot of non-lawyers. Is you would think if an Uber hits you, you would be able to sue Uber. But at least in Michigan, and I've had cases with DoorDash. DoorDash driver ran down a little girl in the middle of the road. And it's not very easy to sue DoorDash or to sue Uber or to sue Lyft. At least in Michigan, and I've seen in a lot of other states, they've gotten these cases dismissed because these people are technically independent contractors. And the law gives them a lot of protection. So can you tell us about your Uber case and how were you able to bust through where many other lawyers have failed?
So here's the thing. In California, you're right. They passed this proposition that said these drivers are independent contractors. And Uber says, oh, we're not responsible. You know, I could talk about this because on this case, I got a verdict and I didn't have to sign confidentiality. That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this. So I can tell you now what really happened. So the driver in this case was driving an Uber. He was in an active Uber at the time. And my client was a pedestrian and, you know, running at night with no shirt on in a crosswalk in an unlit area. So the liability wasn't a slam dunk. And the guy makes a right turn and hits him. And so Uber's like, independent contractor. And they didn't file a motion for summary judgment, but they filed a motion to bifurcate to determine the issue of whether he's an independent contractor or not. So we opposed it with help from several other great attorneys that have, you know, been litigating this issue. And there were minutes in the public utilities way back in like 2013 when Uber was first starting. And they said, oh, we're responsible for our drivers. We're going to take responsibility. And so that was part of the argument. And what we said, look, these guys are not employees. And they are independent contractors, but this is an agency argument. These are people working together for a common goal to make money. And so we made it an agency argument. And so what happened was on the day of trial, instead of getting a ruling by the court on this issue, Uber stipulated to course and scope for this case only.
Why did they do that?
And because if the judge ruled and found, or if we went and a jury determined that there was this relationship, it opens the floodgates, right?
Right.
So you want to create bad law, Uber? Go ahead and risk it. Let's roll the dice. Let's see if it works. Because I'll tell you something. I found out very clearly from talking to jurors about Uber. They don't like Uber. Uber is one of those corporations that jurors said they are a necessary evil. You don't hear that often about corporations. And so they stipulated to course and scope, vicarious liability for this case only. And then I got them to stipulate to liability too, without any comparative argument. So I had a damages only case now against just Uber because I dismissed the driver. And, you know, this case, they offered $1 million and we got a $6.8 million verdict.
Wow.
And now everybody wants me to do their Uber and Lyft cases and DoorDash cases, and I'm happy to do them, but they're not easy.
Right.
They're hard. I have one now. Actually, this is the one I came to Detroit for. And we do something which you know called a trial trailer. So I have this client. It makes me want to cry when I just tell you what happened.
Yeah.
In hearing this?
We would love to hear about it.
Okay. You see what I did there? This is terrible. You don't want to hear, do you? Yeah, so my client is one of the most accomplished doctors in all of Los Angeles. He runs the surgery department at a well-known hospital. He runs the anesthesia department. And he's an Orthodox Jewish guy, and it's on Shabbat. And he's in the Orthodox neighborhood, and he's with another doctor, and they're walking home from synagogue, and they're crossing from one corner to another, and an Uber driver makes a left turn, hits him, and cause a massive brain bleed. The wife, who's a block away, hears the screams, comes running out, is holding her husband, and the driver comes over, I'm sorry, I didn't see him. He was in an active Uber on the time. The case came to us like 2 days later, and we just had a feeling about this driver because we were able to get some information. We filed the lawsuit that same day and went to serve him. And what does he do? Flees to Turkey, the driver.
What?
And we subserve him right before he leaves and flees. So now we have Uber in this case. He had 5 kids, adult kids, a wife of 40 plus years, and 16 grandchildren, and is the head of the anesthesia department at the hospital, and was the kindest. He survived for 3 days, and we can bring a survival claim. And wrongful death case with 6 of the most incredible people as the claimants against Uber. And so I went to New York, to New Jersey actually, to Passaic, to go interview, the kids that live there and the other children that live in Detroit, and his wife, who now had to move away from LA to go live with her kids, about what they took away, this great man, and the footage. And we make a movie trailer of what's going to happen in trial, what we're going to present, the stories, the interviews, but not like a day in the life. I have a filmmaker of 40 plus years, like a real Hollywood director. His name is Frank Calhoun. And if you go on Trial Trailers or at Trial Trailers on Instagram, you can see some of our interviews and stuff. And it's so powerful when you, at a mediation, imagine going to a mediation and expect the mediator to go in the other room and tell this story. Versus I go into the mediation, into the room, and I push play and present this, movie trailer, which is about 15 minutes long, of what's going to happen in the trial, what they did, the story. And then I leave the room and let them think about it. I mean, quite frankly, I give it to them a month before the mediation and be like, really, you want to do this? And so that's the Uber case we have now, and we'll see what happens. But the case is in the discovery phase now, where they're taking depositions of the other doctor who was struck in the crosswalk. They're going to take his depo. I'm sure they'll start deposing the family, but this is a 9-figure case.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing that you're able to do that. And I want to check these out because I think that would be tremendously helpful on some of these cases. So I want to see some of these.
What the tagline is for Trial Trailers is, show them what's coming, watch them settle. I mean, it's really, do you want a jury to see the rest of this movie?
Right. And write the ending to the movie.
And write the ending.
All right, well, we got probably time for one more case. I heard, what do you want to talk about? I know you had someone who was paralyzed at a gym. What do you think? Tell us about one last crazy case.
Well, this one was like a tragic, case where our client was this bodybuilder guy, amazing athlete, and was at a gym he had been going to for years, and they failed to secure this piece of gym equipment, and it fell on top of him and it paralyzed him from the waist down.
Oh my gosh.
It was a difficult case. Incredibly difficult case. There was a waiver signed. As you know, these waivers
Very
can be
difficult.
case killers. And everybody's pointing the finger at each other. And, there was a settlement for $20 million on the case. And there were a lot of, liability issues on the case too. But, what we do as trial lawyers, people are like, oh, it's all about the money. Yeah, for him, his life was ruined. I mean, he couldn't work again. He was taking care of a little boy who was not his own son, but he had married a woman during this process, was taking care of him, was living in an apartment with stairs. He had to have a special car with a van and
Nightmare.
It's just, what happens to these people in these tragedies? If we're not fighting for them, who will? And so it's just, and after he told me when we, gave him the check, which was, for some, the most amount of money they could ever imagine getting, but he said, Brian, I'm going to walk one day and I'm going to stand up and give you a hug. And I was like, I was, going to cry when he said that. And I said, I know you will. I said, I know you will, because he's that kind of fighter, and God willing, science catches up with us and we're able to get his legs working again. I mean, it makes me feel really good to know that at the end of the day, Jonathan, what we do as trial lawyers makes a difference in these people's lives.
Absolutely.
It really does. And it makes the world hopefully a safer place.
A little better place, even if it's one business, one human being, hopefully more. And hopefully, with a lot of the things that you're doing, I hope that it has had an effect. I hope that Terminex stops spraying poison into other people's building spaces. And I hope that Uber, stops trying to avoid responsibility for its negligent drivers and stuff. But I think we still have a lot more fighting to do,
Yeah, and hopefully we make somebody laugh or smile while they're writing the verdict on the verdict sheet, because we presented the case in a creative and different way, and you put those glasses on, during your closing, and you turn to them and,
Yeah, exactly.
You look them in the eye and you say, I didn't see him is not an excuse.
That's right. The other crazy thing about that case, I've talked about it on the shows, my client had a stroke after the defendant testified. She was so upset. And the bizarre thing is, her primary care physician comes in earlier that day and says, I'm worried about her. She's gained a lot of weight. Her stress levels are up. And I said, well, what are you concerned about? What does that mean if her stress levels up? What type of physical changes? And he goes, I'm concerned she's going to have a stroke or a heart attack. The defendant testifies. That night, I call my client. I said, look, you got to go on the stand tomorrow. Do you want to come over for dinner? And her husband answers the phone and says, she's in the hospital. She had a stroke. I mean, it was like, you couldn't write that in a movie. I mean, it was so tragic and so just ominous, but this is what we do, right, Brian?
Yeah. And listen, I'm excited to come back to Detroit. That was the first, well, actually, no, it's the second time I'd gone there for depots, but Detroit looks great.
Yeah, we've come a long way,
It was oh yeah, it's a beautiful city, despite what some people say in the press. It really was a great time that I spent there. And I'm looking forward to coming out there and sharing these ideas with some other great
we're really excited to have you. If you like Brian's, what he had to share with us, if you don't like it, you're out of your mind, so you shouldn't even be watching this show. If you do like it, check it out. It's at, what is it, Trial Lawyers Improv? Go ahead and tell our listeners.
Here, I'm gonna tell these to you. Maybe you have some graphics guy put them on the screen, but the Instagram is at Improv for Trial, at Law Breiter, and then of course my buddy Frank's amazing product called at Trial Trailers, like a trailer of a movie. Trial Trailers. All of them are websites too. So improvfortrial.com, lawbrighter.com, and trial.
I love it. We're gonna check it out. Also, if you want to see Brian in person, you want to get to know him, you want to hear more about this, if you're a plaintiff's attorney or you do criminal defense,
come to my house. Come to my house.
And if you can't make it out to his house, go to mtlsummit.com. That's mtlsummit.com and sign up for Michigan Trial Lawyers Summit, which is downtown Detroit, June 20th and 21st. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to learn a lot, and we're going to just kick some ass. Brian, thank you.
I hope you're going to have some of that. I hope you're going to have some of that Detroit style pizza.
We are going to have it delivered right to your room, whatever you want, my man. Well, thank you for being on the show, Brian. We'll see you very soon.
Mr. Marko, thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to another great episode today. Wow, what a great, crazy Cases Gone Wild with my friend, actor, amazing trial lawyer, Brian Breiter. If you check out the websites that we listed. Check out Marko Law, www.markolaw.com, and we will see you in another 2 weeks for another great episode of Cases Gone Wild.